Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm curious if this is your first Write the Docs Pittsburgh event. Can you raise a hand shyly? All right, just make sure we know who those folks are so we can greet them later if you haven't already. Hi, I'm Rachel Stavchansky. I think I've met most of you, but current organizer of Write the Docs. I'm honored to also introduce Betsy, who's going to be helping organize some events in the future. So kudos to Betsy. Also, thank you to CMU for hosting the space tonight and for Newport for speaking. And then also to Salesforce for our lovely snack buffet. We appreciate their support. So I think most of you know Write the Docs, but it's a community of people who care about documentation, essentially, for anyone that's new. And so I will now introduce tonight's speaker. So Nupur Ranade, I hope I'm pronouncing it vaguely correctly, is an assistant professor of rhetoric and technical communication at Carnegie Mellon University. Through her teaching, she tries to build a bridge between academia and industry and help students develop professional networks while they also contribute to the community that they are a part of. She has authored multiple papers published in journals, including Technical Communication, AI and Society, Communication Design Quarterly, and IEEE Transactions on Professional Communication. And her research interests include technical communication practice and pedagogy, professional writing and editing, inclusive design, and ethics of AI. So we're really thrilled to hear from her today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel, so much for the introduction, but also for the food and also for setting up Zoom and doing everything that this event needs, including reaching out to me and for keeping this chapter alive. I don't know, for those who don't know, Rachel actually reached out to me as soon as she found out I was a new professor here. I was going to one of the events. She reached out to me and wanted to build a connection, and I love that. It was more than a warm welcome to Pittsburgh. So I'm so excited to be here. I came in fall of last year, so I'm new to Pittsburgh. I'm new to CMU. This is only my second semester. I'm really excited for it to be over and get into summer break. But I'm still getting to know a lot of folks. So I'm just thrilled to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity again. Tonight, my talk is making AI visible, and I did want to give a little bit of a background before I move into the talking session. I started working on AI research back in 2019. I was a PhD student at that time, and if you had attended any industry talks such as STC or Write the Docs sessions back in 2018-19, there were a lot about chatbots. Chatbots were everywhere. Everybody thought that they're going to rule the world and TechCom is going to die and it's going to be all chatbots everywhere. If you attended any academic conversations, they were all about social media. How social media is changing the world, and that's the biggest invention, and social media is everywhere. How technical communicators need to jump on social media channels and talk to actual users to solve their problems. So that was all the vibe at that time. And then I decided, I think AI is sort of somewhere in there because AI is actually a very old technology, which started off in the 1950s. And we are in CMU right now, and it's very interesting because CMU is considered to be one of the birthplaces of AI, because two researchers here gave a talk at Dartmouth College and so other conferences around the world and in the country, which led to the beginning of AI and especially even generative AI. So that being said, I got interested in this topic back then. I looked at chatbots, but I was also looking at natural language processing and how to design, develop chatbots. I was conducting workshops around chatbots, thinking about all the models that are used, but I was also looking at some of the ethical aspects of chatbots. Like if you use Siri or Cortana and Amazon Echo, which was also really popular back then. They were all women and women. So there was a huge gender conversation around that. I wrote about it. I talked about it at events and all of that. So my interests were varying. And because of the graduate student opportunities that I had, where you did a lot of research, you did whatever you wanted, you spoke to whoever you wanted, I got to do a lot of that work without any expectations of productization, which is sort of an expectation from you guys. So I was lucky in that case. So I was able to get into all the directions. Now, some of those directions I have been able to document as journal articles or conference papers, proceedings, workshops, or just informal talks like these. And so, what I'm going to talk about today are sort of an amalgamation of all those resources put together. I've tried to make it applicable to my audiences today, which is mostly industry practitioners. We have a few academics I know in the room, and some both. Alan, I know you're doing both of the things, so which is really great. I've tried to tailor it to my audience, like technical communicators do. But if I have missed and if I'm totally going on an academic tangent, do let me know and I can stop and just reorient myself. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, the book was not a bad book. So today's agenda is I'm going to start giving you a background of AI and technical communication, and then the main crux of this presentation, which is making AI visible, that I have divided into three different parts. One is writing with AI, writing for AI, and writing about AI. Now, this is all only relevant to technical communication. So if you're coming from other spaces, then just accommodate this talk. The third one is heuristics for evaluating AI transparency. Here's where I become a nerd and I go into the academic uh, research on how to write correctly and how that applies to a lot of AI writing. And finally, I'm going to show you a few case studies. If any of you are interested in UX work or just documenting work, which is not the traditional documentation that we think of, but more interesting sort of error writing or writing for user interfaces and those sorts of things, and those case studies might be really interesting to you all. So starting off with AI and TC. Now, AI is everywhere. Everybody talks about how AI is going to take over the world. But I think all those perspectives can be divided into three. The first one is a transhumanist approach, which if you have engineers and if you work in a software company, especially, they use the transhumanist approach. AI can do so much better than humans. AI are going to rule the world because they are the best. They are the technology, which is so advanced and so great and all of those things. So that is the belief that humans can and should use technology to transcend their biological limitations, which means AI is so much better than humans. The post-humanist approach is more from the school of philosophy, where that perspective is not just thinking about what the technology is doing, but they're thinking about how do humans work with that technology and what does that relationship mean. And so they are answering those really heavy philosophical questions that we all have. They're good for a coffee discussion over coffee, but maybe not so much for our day-to-day lives. And the final one is the augmented approach. And that is actually the approach that I'm super interested in, which is human augmentation with AI. Now, augmentation means the use of technology to improve human capabilities, not in a way that AI is better than us, but almost like an assistant. AI can assist us to do the things that we've been doing and maybe do them better, faster in some ways. But then also it needs human oversight so that we can make sure that it's ethical and there is accuracy, but also, using AI in a good way. That's the approach I'm interested in. I work using AI. I teach my students to write using AI. AI is part of my syllabus. They can use AI in the classroom, but they just have to let me know that I've used AI and for what. So there's just that human oversight also informing what you did to control that AI to work in the way that you wanted it to work. So I think technical communicators are placed really well to use this AI augmentation to either make their tasks faster or get accurate content and work in different places like personalization, localization, and all of that. Because what we do is we identify knowledge gaps and close them through our content. So what AI is going to help us do is both of these things: identify knowledge gaps and also write content to close them. Now, how we do that and how AI can help us, I'm going to talk about in the next slides. But before that, a little bit of history, because if you look around you, you're going to maybe see people who are worried that AI is taking over technical writers' jobs. Because if AI can identify the gaps and also write content to close those gaps, that means what's our job left then? And like we're going to be out of a job. And especially the current layoffs in the tech industry have, gotten people even more worried, thinking that AI is taking away writers' jobs. But it seems like most of those layoffs have happened, and I could be wrong because I work in this space, which is academia. But there've been layoffs because they want to use all those resources and put all that money into AI and buying AI equipment and buying servers and GPUs and all that stuff, which requires money. So I think that's the agenda. It's not really to take away technical communicators' jobs, because by the end of this presentation, you learn how our jobs are more important than they've ever been. And this is a sentence. It is not my original statement. It's a statement that people have used over decades in technical communication spaces, such as STC conferences back in the 90s and even early 2000s. They thought that the internet and, jobs are going to go away. Every room you walk to, they were like, technical writers are going to lose their jobs. But we've only seen about 70% growth in the number of jobs since the 2000, like early 2000s until now. So jobs are growing. We don't have to worry. We just have to be smart and find ways to work with AI. So my slide is about emerging technologies and AI, just going back into the history a little bit. Every time we were worried about our jobs. So this is when spell checkers were there, but we also had tools like acrolinks, which are editors, which help us sort of find out grammatical mistakes and other things. So they're essentially editors, but we still need editors because there is that human oversight. Editors do a lot of tasks in the company. They help us write well. They make sure that we match the style guidelines that the company is using, and ensure that the docs are ready to ship, because they need to be look good, consistent, and all of those things. So editors are still in jobs, and those are still there. Although we have spell checkers, we have acrolinks and all other tools that will help us do that. Grammarly is also a popular one. Then we had machine translation, which we thought would take away all the translators' jobs. It did, though. It did take a lot of translators' jobs. But then machine translation is also still not accurate. Being around for over 20 years, machine translation still requires human oversight. They just don't get paid as much money as they used to, but translators are still around and still have jobs, because there's a lot of, now the job is to train AI models. So all the translators have moved into these jobs, which is to train AI models in different languages, because they're trying to have generative AI speak all different dialects and languages and all of those things. Another technology was the search engine optimization. So we had only the navigation, which used topic headings, and we tried to be so good about our headings so that people knew what they were looking for and could find it only by looking at the table of contents or the index page. And search engine optimization killed the index page because everybody just went to Google and looked for what they wanted. And the heading is where we started keyword stuffing. We started stuffing keywords into the URL. Probably stuffing is the wrong word, but we did try so hard to put them there. I see a few faces nodding and some others not nodding, because you probably don't even know what that is. Because we don't have to do that much anymore, because a lot of these algorithms and these document production tools that take them into release take care of those algorithms. And so we don't have to work so hard, which is great. But then we still need content strategists. We still need good writing to make it findable, not for the users, because ACO will take care of that, but for ACO to understand what we are saying and what it should look for and where our content should rank. So I don't know if you've ever looked, maybe you've never looked for a video on how to use a tractor and how something is wrong with my tractor and how do I debug that, because I don't think any of us use tractors. But if you look for such videos, there is a very good chance that you might not get to the page that the company or these manufacturers of tractors have created, but you'd rather go to a page that a farmer created and who sits in a state like North Carolina and is farming and has created this YouTube video and has shared it with their followers. And maybe that's the first link that you would get on your Google search, because it's just more intuitive, easy to understand. We don't want to look up a manual. And that's the power of SEO. It's looking for clicks. It's looking for the right words, but it's also looking for the clicks. And all of that, what as content strategists we try to do is have our content come to the top. If we are in that tractor making company, we want our video to show up first. And that's the job of a content strategist, which is still alive despite ACO. Finally, support specialists for user-centered help, which again goes back to my 2019 reckoning of, doing chatbots, because we thought chatbots was going to take over the world. We thought the first jobs that would be replaced would be the support specialists. But now what the support specialists are doing, they have maybe a phone call with the user. They're asking the user their specific problem. So there is not only context, there is a history of the issues that this user has faced, the type of uses for the product that this specific user has, and so many things that are only related to this audience, their purpose, and the context that they're coming from. And so chatbots, to just establish that knowledge about this customer, they're going to take hours of conversations with the user, which they don't want to do because they're going to hang up on the chatbot. So support specialists are still around and still very much willing to help our users. And again, that's an area where AI might, change things is what is expected. Now, what's different between these technologies and AI? Why are people so fearful of AI when we've seen the same story repeat over decades? I think what's different is the transformer architecture. I'm going to give you, how many of you know how GPT works, or like just have seen this thing kind of before? Yeah, many kind of. So if I'm totally incorrect, let me know. Otherwise, I think I can pull this off. So the transformer architecture is how AI or generative AI is learning how to write. Now, when we learn language, or I don't know how you all learn language, but English is not my first language. I come from India. We spoke several different languages at home. So that was the first word I spoke was in probably English. So the way I learned English was through my school, where they taught us stories. We had short stories growing up. We learned the alphabet. Then we tried to form words. The words then came together to form stories. So the stories was how I learned the language, and also learning to use specific words in specific context. So because I learned it through stories, I knew what the context is growing up. And, coming to the US, I just failed to understand some of the English because I did not have the context, because we learned a lot of British English because thanks to colonialism. And then when I came here, it was American English, and there are a few things that Americans just do differently. So it took me some time to understand the context and then tailor my language so that y'all can understand me better. And so that is how humans learn generally, through stories. GPT does not care about stories. It doesn't care about language formation, how words are formed, how characters are formed. What it only cares about is which word comes after which. That's all it knows. So what it does, it will take a text, or, this is the model for how it would work with your input text, which is a prompt. It will take in your question or the request that you send the generative AI. It will code that text. So basically, when it codes, it's going to remove all the filler words, remove all the garbage, and only focus on the keywords. And then that's what the encoding does. And then it tries to pull up some of the contextual embeddings that it had. So contextual embeddings are sort of classifications and putting words together in a group, or like making groupings across all words. Contextual embedding looks something like this. For a man, it will also put king in the same box, brother in the same box, doctor in the same box, because they're all related to man. Same for woman, but it will do woman queen, woman sister, but then woman nurse, because there are more number of women who are nurses. And that's a problem with generative AI generally. So I did want to pull that up. But again, it's just doing these classifications to understand what is what. It's not really trying to understand what a nurse does, where they go and what they do, how they spend their day. They're not trying to understand who was a king and who lived happily ever after, because it's not learning through stories. And so what it follows is this classification model. Again, I'm showing the same thing here. It doesn't know square from rectangle because they all have right angles and it kind of looks similar. So people are maybe using it all in geometry, so it thinks that it's all the same thing. In technical writing and stuff that we care about, content, it's looking at all the questions that users ask. For example, how do I get a new, like, how do I get a new card, bank card sent to China? My card expires soon. Will you send me automatically? And all of these things are related to maybe ordering a new card. So all it does, it remembers it as the card is about to expire and I need to do something about it. Now you can see some of these questions are fairly different. What is the cost and time frame of getting a new card? but it still classified it as card about to expire, which means it's going to throw out the same value that it remembers, which comes like around that text. So whatever comes close by, it's going to pull those up. Where can I have a new bank card sent to China? Again, not really related. Maybe it's going to throw off values, which is here's your new card. This is what we need to do to get a new card. So it's going to throw off the same values because what it is missing is the context. There is no lack of control in the context. So when it starts decoding and pulling up data or content, which comes through the starting section of the output text, it is only trying to pull whatever is present in the same space as these questions or the keyword that was used to classify these questions. Now, what this does is what we call as hallucinations. So we say that generative AI is hallucinating because it is producing inaccurate texts. I once sent my husband. I wanted to send a picture to my husband. Like he wanted to check if I was awake or not, and he asked me to send a picture. Like just raise two fingers and click a picture, and I used AI to say like, can you send a picture of an Indian girl with two fingers up, and it showed three. And it just created this. So it does not understand numbers. It just understands fingers and a girl. That's it. That was the only accurate text about it. And all of the else was not true at all. But anyway, so AI generated content can enhance some of the things that we've been doing, create content, achieve consistency. If we tell it to do something, it might pull up some of the right information. So we think that it's really useful, but it can also impact the reputation of the company by giving misinformation. Now, this is not content we want to trust. We want human oversight before we can trust it. So that's like, I think the biggest gaps that AI has created, and that is a place that we can maybe jump in and help AI because we believe in augmentation, or I believe, but I think we should all believe in human augmentation with AI, so that human oversight. Now, there are some good things and bad things. Again, I've put them across that arrow over there. So the good things are efficiency, faster content production, personalized experience, tailored customer engagement. So if you get users, if you put in all the user information, maybe it's going to give you the right output. It reduces costs because there's a lot of operational costs in creating content, and then there could be high quality content. You can think of that because, again, as a English as a second language speaker, there's a lot of words and terms that I don't know. I don't use in my day-to-day English speaking. I try to be a technical communicator, very plain language, and that's also easier for me. But then maybe with AI, I can use it to polish my cover letter or, a fancy message that I want to write to my chair. I'll just, use ChatGPT maybe. Again, I think the flip side is that there's a lot of misinformation. There is bias because, as I showed you in the classification for a nurse, it said that nurses are always women, which we know is not true. So there is that unfair bias, which is we get skewed results. A lot of plagiarism, so content can directly get copied from other places, which is really not appreciated in my field. I could get sued, fired for plagiarizing something. And I don't think most people understand that so much, that copying is can be really, really lethal. And then the uncanny valley effect, comes from the research of Masahiro Mori, and it talks about how perfectly, like people or things that look very close to humans or something that's mimicking humans too closely can actually be really scary for some people. And that's the uncanny valley effect, discomfort from something appearing too human. Now, the three solutions or things that we can do to make this AI visible so that we know it's not a human, it is AI, is one is clear disclosures. How, where, when, what is AI in this process? Like, what has AI done? So something that I put in my syllabus is you can use AI all you want, but just let me know when and where and why have you used it and how has it worked for you or not worked for you. The second is human oversight, prompt engineering, deep audience analysis, structured authoring, content mapping are some of the things for human oversight. Finally, ethical AI training. So learning about Things like data literacy. I think it's really important. We came from, digital literacy, technological literacy. We are thinking of AI literacy, but I think data literacy is what ties it all together because it's important for us to understand what data is going into the training of these AI models in order for us to reverse engineer and think of where the bias is coming from. So along with that goes bias detection and mitigation, awareness of socio-technical systems and interactions. So socio-technical is again where, we are all great at that because we're always involved in the social, which is our users, and the technical, which is the technical products and the documentation that we write. And so these are the three different areas. Now, critical thinking, I think, is extremely useful, but we've been having debates in academia about the use of AI. That's the only reason I put this slide up today. Critical thinking and AI go hand in hand because there are two ways of critical thinking. One is to think about something so critically that we shut it down. And there are folks who would want to shut AI down, like completely block its use from schools, from academic environments, especially if you're teaching writing studies or, just writing in the writing profession. There are a lot of things that AI is really not good for, and we don't want students to be using that. But I think we can also use critical thinking to make something better by actually understanding where the problem is and what the problem is. We can actually help in the development of AI. And I think that's true for technical communicators as well. We're so closely involved with our users, and we're so closely involved with the technology and the developers of these technical products. So I think we're like so well placed to talk to both the audiences and make some arguments about how something needs to be better because, let's say the technology came in, we tested it on the user said that, here's a problem I have. Maybe you're the only person in your whole company who knows that this is a subjectivity issue and we have users who do these things or are not getting their solutions because of this problem. And so that's how, we can help close that gap. So by making the role of AI visible in these processes is how I think we can mitigate some of these issues. Again, three ways of doing that: evaluating AI-generated content, so evaluating it critically, understanding AI's limitations, thinking about the limitations critically, and finally, critically empowering technical communicators to see AI as a resource or an assistant. Again, augmented thinking. Moving on to the more fun and practical pieces, making AI visible. Now, here's a work that I'm going to pull up, rhetorical prompt engineering. Now, prompt engineering is alive and well because what people think is, if you want to get the most accurate content from AI, what you should do is you should write your prompt better. OpenAI themselves have the only documentation that they released with ChatGPT when they published or released ChatGPT in the November of 2022. The only documentation they released was best practices of writing a good prompt. And as technical communicators, we know that's never enough. Everybody is going to come up with different ideas of prompts. It's never going to be sufficient because it's just a best practice. It's not a generic standard approach of getting the right output. So there were a lot of AI hallucinations at the beginning, and everybody was complaining, and there's a lot of testing going on and all of that. And this article actually arose from that need of having a generic formula for prompt generation or prompt engineering. And this formula is not based on a best practice approach, but it is very much grounded in theory of rhetoric, which has been alive and well for thousands of years. What the theory of rhetoric says, or this is Bitzer's, for those who have taken 870 at CMU would recognize this from your classes. It's Bitzer's theory of rhetorical situation. What Bitzer released this theory in the 1970s, and there was a lot of argument about it and a lot of academics fighting about it. But I still think it's a really helpful theoretical setup. What Bitzer says is that for any communication situation, let's just forget generative AI for a minute. For any communication situation, if you know your audience, the genre, the purpose, subject, context, excisions, which is the problem, and if you speak as the writer or the author or the rhetor in this case, if you know all these elements, then there is a very good chance that you would have the most fitting response to a communication problem in that communication situation. So I collected these items. I used this theory to develop this formula, which is a generic formula for prompt generation, which mostly works for several genres. We tested it for memos, user guides, and cover letters. And we've also tested it for other things, but those were the only ones that we used for this research paper specifically, or memos also. And what we basically are arguing that if you use all these inputs into your prompt, you might get a more effective content output from generative AI. And again, just to remind you, this is writing with AI. So here we are using that augmented approach of using AI for writing. So here's an example, which is a screenshot from the manuscript that we published with AI and Society. If you look at the prompt at the very top, we start with this prompt, which is a basic prompt, write a guide to creating an account on a social media networking app. That's it. And then here are the instructions that it's giving you. I'm going to not give you all the time to read through that, but I'm going to show you the big differences. So here's the rhetorical devices prompt, which means we used all these different rhetorical devices or those different elements. And that's the prompt that we generated by just answering who is the audience, what's the genre, what's the purpose of this, what's the context. And that's the prompt input that we got. The workforce is adopting a new social media app for professional networking purposes. A novice, older user would like to learn how to create an account to keep up with their colleagues, as the app's help center create a user guide that informs users on the convenient functions to create an account successfully and supports all users regardless of technical experience. Now you can see there's a lot of audience in that. There is genre, there is the purpose, a lot of context. And you see that these instructions definitely look longer. And then you see that, there is uh, the welcome to the social media app, which might sound very welcoming and inviting to do, especially for a novice older user. And then at the end, also they're giving some instructions or just giving them some success messages saying that, you did a great job and so on. So that's one of the differences, and this is something that all of you can also use for writing with AI. Now, this is the second piece that I had been working on, and again, is published with the Text Gened, which is an edited collection of AI writing assignments. And it was actually edited, it's a co-edited collection, but Annette Wee was the first lead editor over there. He teaches at University of Pittsburgh, amazing scholar, again, on coding literacies and AI and a lot of digital writing stuff. Anyway, this assignment was about editing with AI. This is an assignment I created in a 2021 classroom when students in the technical writing classroom getting worried about AI taking away their jobs. And now at that time, ChatGPT wasn't even there. So they were more worried about tools like Grammarly. It was a technical editing class. They're worried about tools, and they're like, we're going to lose our jobs. And so this was an assignment to show them how they're not going to lose their jobs. So in this assignment, what students did was they created a chat or a text. They created some content using AI. And then what we did was we calculated the readability score of that text. And the assignment was to sort of edit the text for the grammatical editing that humans would do. And then also to reduce the readability score at least a little bit. If you have worked with the Flesh Can CAD reading scores, readability scores, they're really hard to make them get them lower. And so students just working so hard doing that, spent 2 hours. At the end of the assignment, they did have to share the amount of time they spent on doing this assignment. They spent 2 hours just to reduce the readability score by a 0.2, 0.4, which was significant. And I was like, see, if you've spent so much time, you know so much, you have the context, and AI doesn't have the context. It is not going to know the audience as well as you do as being humans. And again, being around humans, it's not going to know. So it's going to take a long time for them to actually have this. What happened to my slides? Okay. So The next one, so that was again editing with AI. This one was AI for persona design. This is something I do in my user experience classes, and I'm teaching a course on audience this semester. So audience equals users for CMU, and then user experience. So students are prepping for getting roles as user experience designers, user researchers, or technical communicators. And now in persona design, there are a lot of tools that you can get for creating ready-made personas. So there's AI now, which can create a persona for you. I don't know, do we have any user UX researchers in the room? Okay. So personas are where writers or user experience researchers, what they'll do is they'll define a persona of a specific user who might be using the product or the app that you have designed. And you give them characteristics and traits and different attributes which help your sort of teams understand who you're talking about. So just giving sort of a name and a face to make your justifications and arguments more powerful. That's what UX researchers use a lot. Now, this is a persona that Miro, which is a tool which has AI features. We have put it also generates personas. So this is the persona that it generated. But in this class, we've been talking a lot about empathy mapping and what are the ways of thinking about actual users and what are the tools to do that. So if you look at AI again, very surface level, a 22-old female living in Los Angeles has like, this is what she does, and here are the motivations for using this product, and here are the devices that she uses. So it's a very surface level depiction of this user called Emily Smith. And what the students did was got a little bit deeper, and we used the empathy mapping framework, which accounts for the thoughts, the actions that this user takes, the feelings and statements that they make. So these are things that AI is not able to generate or even think about because it goes deeper than the surface level characteristics of users. Again, AI is only able to imagine things that it's seeing a lot. But for every product, those are going to be different, which it doesn't understand. The emotions or the motivations for a product like a social media app are going to be very different from, let's say there is a website for abortions and people who support abortions. The those are very different tools. But then if you ask AI to design a persona for these, it's going to think of the same things, most likely, maybe add a little bit of feminine features to the abortion website and not for, the social media app. But that's the only difference it's going to think about. But then as designers, we know that there's so much else that goes on. So thoughts are literally what are they thinking on a day-to-day basis? What are the actions that they take, which include, they're like living with their family and, going to school, doing things like that. Feelings again are what are they feeling and how are they feeling? So this is about a student worried about meeting deadlines. I don't know if AI can think about how students are constantly worried about grades and deadlines and what they're wearing and what their friend is doing and how they're so there's so much that goes on, like the fast fashion culture. This is something that my students created, so it is actually really true. Um, I don't think they're thinking about that. I don't know a lot of things that my students do, so I cannot imagine AI knows. My students were talking about this fast fashion culture called Depop on TikTok when we were creating this assignment. And I'm like, I honestly have no idea. But you guys, it seems like all of you know what you're doing. So just keep doing. And I can just Google in my little corner, ask ChatGPT what Depop is. And, that's how we work. But anyway, so these are some of the things that it's going to take a long time for AI to know, but because we have access to users and our audience, we have tools like usability testing. We do have that direct access again, that connection, which we could use.
Have you seen any published work or anything like that using AI for persona design? Or
There is some coming up. Unfortunately, academics are behind because we don't have access to some of these tools. We don't have money to buy them. We don't have companies who will sponsor.
we're just behind.
We're just behind, period. But I know there is theory of empathy mapping, which is published. And I just put this two and two together. but there are persona designing. There's a lot on that. So maybe you can also try to put two and two together and look up some stuff.
Thank you. This is relevant to what I'm doing this week.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to talk more if you want to discuss a little bit at the end, if we have time.
Generated that persona. You said something.
Yes, so Miro is a tool which is like Figma. I don't know if you've heard of Figma.
Yeah, there's separate tools.
Yeah, there's separate tools. It's like that. I think you do. You work in UX space.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm sorry. But yeah, it is like that. But they have this AI feature now, which you can use to generate personas. You can ask again. It's a prompt. You give it a prompt, and it will do stuff for you, and actually give you templates and all of those things. I think I should speed up because we'll have no time left for questions towards the end. Okay. So again, there is AI, writing with AI. I was going to talk a little bit about data analytics. I don't know how many of the room use data analytics for users. Awesome. That's really great. This is also some of the data analytics research that I've done in the past. And if you have seen Google Analytics, if you're using that, they have this AI whole almost like a palette that you can use now. It has a lot of functions, and each of these you can see like there's basic performance of the users, there's demographics of the users. But if you look at the questions that it's asking, it's definitely meant more for marketing and sales folks. None of those questions make sense to us because AI doesn't know that technical communicators use Google Analytics to learn about the users. We have a very different way. More views is not a good thing for us. More views is actually bad, which means the product has problems and we actually need to solve those problems because more people are coming to the documentation. It could be an error on the user interface, which is why people are coming to the docs. They should not be coming to the docs. They should come to the docs less. We should have lesser support calls. Is that sort of a relationship? And so AI just has skipped the boat and it doesn't understand that. So all of these questions, you can look at them closely. I can share the slides later, but they're all about asking about users and who they are. What we should rather do is build connections across what we are seeing. So the data points and then some of the other input features that we have. Then I did want to talk about personalization, writing for AI algorithms. So this is where I switched from writing with AI to writing for AI. What this means is, when we learned technical writing, and I don't know, you've probably learned in different ways. When I first learned about technical writing, it was about, we try to understand our users, try to understand your audience, step 1. Step 2, write for those audience. Step 3, edit and whatever. So we used to always try to know our audience, which was step 1, but now we need to know our algorithms because we're no more writing for our audience directly. There is algorithms in between, which is either the AI product, like generative AI, which is pulling up your content and showing it to the users because that's what users are using. Before that, we had search engines again, and going back to my SEO rant earlier, we wrote for SEO algorithms, which pulled our content and then displayed it to the users. So it's time we understand that we're not directly tailoring our content for the user. We're tailoring it for an algorithm, which will try to make sense of it. And it should make sense of it in the right way because we have very few testing methods. Unlike usability testing, where we could, just bring in our users, test with them, have a focus group, conduct interviews, conduct surveys, have a like button and a, hit comment button. We can't do that anymore for algorithms because we would never know what they are pulling up for which user because algorithms work in mysterious ways. SEO used to have their algorithm written every year, every 3 years, and now Google rewrites the code or like the crawling algorithm. I think they change it every 3 days. So it's so hard to play that catch-up game. We had, 2D personalization is what we used for our users when we thought of, if you are if you want print content or you want online content, then here's what you're going to do. We use conditional designing for that approach. Tools like Maker allowed us to do that. But now we are thinking of this 3D personalization where the algorithm already knows the user's demographics, where they're located, user research insights, past interactions with that product, with the content, with different websites. Cookies is giving a wealth of information about who the user is. So now are we ready to tailor our content for this? Who knows? But that's something that we should probably be doing. And there's so much that just keeps happening under, like just behind the scenes that we have no idea. Now, here is an overleaf account, which I use for making my CV and other professional materials. But it just knows that I'm at Carnegie Mellon. Now, it could be I don't know what it's pulling up. It could be pulling up other Google accounts that I have, but Overleaf is not a Google company. It's a different company. So maybe not that. And maybe it's pulling up my IP address because I am at Carnegie Mellon, but then I almost work from home, which is in North Oakland. So it could be UPID or it could be Carnegie, it could be anything. So I have no idea how it knows I'm at Carnegie Mellon University. Maybe it's reading my CV, which is a possibility. I think the most likely possibility. But then are we thinking of these things? Because I wasn't. It just one day asked me that if you log in with Carnegie Mellon instead of your personal Gmail, you just get so many new features. I could sell my soul to the devil and like just get all those features by logging in, or I could just stick with my personal account and just wait for this message to disappear. And so it's this level of personalization that we have no control, and it's just happening everywhere, more and more all the time. One of my collaborator, Daniel Hawkett, he actually works at University of Richmond in their web management department, and he tailors ads for different programs that they have. And this is a really exciting brewing program that they have launched. So there is different things to social media posts. There are different components, the call to action, the headline, and the primary text. Now, because we are technical communicators, we can instantly see that, that's how we chunk our content. We always have like short description, we have like figures, we have like intro, whatever. So they have different chunks to content, and Meta, has these range of options. You can have paid versions of creating ads. What these ads do is every user will see this ad differently, depending on, again, their past interactions and that 3D model of user analysis. And how it does that is it sort of asks Daniel, who let's say is the one writing the ad, it asks Daniel to fill out these different components. And then the AI will automatically sort of rephrase it, use different words, different terms on it, place place these components in different spaces around the thing, like the ad. For Facebook stories, it will appear differently. If it is a post on Facebook, it will appear differently. And you will only get this ad on your page if you have ever in the past looked for something similar, if you live in that area, or if you had anything to do with the University of Richmond. But for a person sitting in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon University, never tried to learn brewing. I probably should, but I never tried. I'm never going to see this ad. Maybe Daniel is never going to see this ad. He is a 55-year-old person and he's like, I don't want to learn this. So he's not going to see this ad, although he developed this ad. So there's no feedback on how his content is showing to the users. And so that's the level of personalization of algorithms, which we have to do, technical communicators have to do. I have to teach my students how to do because that's how they get jobs. But at the same time, we have no control. And so all we are left with is imagination and trying to be better than AI, trying to understand how AI works and use the right components in order to get the best thing that we can achieve. Now here what we are seeing is a short description. Again, you will see that it is rephrased. And this is rephrasing of the content, not because it's not Google search, it's only because it's a sponsored, that they're both sponsored on Google, but the devices are different. That's a cell phone and this is a web browser. Things just change constantly. But we should not be worried of changes because we have learned structured authoring and how to do that because, structured authoring was we divided all our content into smaller chunks so that we can have the most precise information in the smallest amount of text possible. And then whoever wanted to pull that chunk could pull it, whether it's Google search or micro content and maybe chat GPT now is maybe pulling that short description from somewhere or that short topic from somewhere where you had written it in the past. So thinking of structured authoring now, but being more mindful and being more specific about what that structured authoring is used for. So again, we can think about the rhetorical situation, about maybe stuffing, not keywords this time, but stuffing in the specific users that we want to show this content to. using the purpose, the problem that the users are having, expert versus novice, like developers versus end users, and those sorts of things. So just being more creative about tailoring content, because now we are writing not for users, but we are writing for AI. Another thing is helping classifiers using features like related works. Now, what this will do is whatever the model will see, the LLM will see on this page, it will start classifying it into one space, like the card about to expire example. So what we want to do is have more of the content that is relevant to this information of this topic, have it on one page, have it jumbled together so that it doesn't, understand stories, but it understands that they are maybe co-located, which means they probably mean the same thing. And let's have this all bundled together. So there is a higher likelihood that it's going to pull out that content at the same time. Now, finally, it is writing about AI, and I'm going to really try to be fast and skip through this section. These are simple case studies on maybe places where we could insert ourselves, like we have in the past for writing about errors, UI writing. So this is a ChatGPT case where writing about AI is letting users know that AI exists and this is what AI is doing. It's not the company doing it. It's not a writer in the backdrop or a human who is trying to assist you. This is literally AI, and AI could be wrong. So you better know that. So that's sort of our role and responsibility, so that the reputation of our company does not suffer, and people can actually, or users can actually trust the company or the organization that we are part of. So there is a temporary chat feature on ChatGPT, which lets you if you write in it, then the history disappears and things like that. So it just gives you that message. Again, at the bottom here, you see that it says, ChatGPT says that ChatGPT is experimental or can make mistakes. Check what is that? Important info. So it's giving you access to more information about the ChatGPT tool itself. Again, ChatGPT will also give you links of the sources that it has pulled off information from, which is another way of communicating to the user where this stuff is coming from. Again, something that we have been using hyperlinks forever, so that's the same stuff. So what if we helped some of these developers of AI, not ChatGPT, because it's really intuitive. Maybe there's a million people who want to work with OpenAI right now. But what if your company was creating similar tools? Your role could be about making this AI visible by writing messages, because you know what the users want, what types of users you have, and what their needs could be, so that they're not fooled by the AI and your company can maintain its reputation. Model cards is another thing that you can get involved with. Model cards is where engineers are writing documentation. So imagine, after decades of technical communication being a profession, model cards are still written by engineers. So what happens is they write the model card, the product goes into shipping. If it is an AI product, it goes into shipping, like other people try to use it, and they run into problems. You know why? Because the engineers wrote it. So here's a great place for writers to step up, and especially if you're in leadership positions in your organization, my request to you is try to get into this space so that we can have technical communicators participate in a genre that currently is completely invisible to the leaders. I don't know why. We've been there forever. We know our users, we work with QA, we work with everybody. I don't know why they've kept us away from this particular genre. I really hope that we get pulled in, and because we could do this work so much better and we could do all the right things. We are in no rush of production. We can work with them along the way and promise to deliver the best output. So I did a literature review on model cards, and this is how I realized that only engineers are working on this. They've started using words like producers, agents, reviewers, users, which we always call audience analysis, which is step one for us. They talk about how writing should be of model cards. They talk about consistency, comprehensiveness, and the principles of writing. So they are literally reinventing the wheel that we have been rolling for decades now by saying the same things, but they don't know what they're saying because they don't have the research in it. They're engineers who are doing the writing and editing. And finally, they're thinking about how can we make model cards tailored for our stakeholders? What are some of the design considerations? How can we achieve trust and safety? How can our users trust us? Again, reinventing the wheel. We've done this forever. Content strategy, accessibility are some of the ways we've achieved this. I'm going to stop here just for the sake of time. I've been going on for too long. I did have a heuristic at the end, which is completeness, accuracy, clarity, accessibility, and organization applied to AI and work like model cards documentation, which I can talk more about maybe another time. But here's a great handbook. There are different editions of this book. I think the first one came out in the early 1990s, and then they just have been making it better every time. So I applied the same heuristic to documentation and for AI. And how do we talk about AI achieve completeness? Because completeness doesn't mean write about everything. It means write only what the users want. So these are challenging principles, and no one's thinking of applying them to AI work right now, but I think we are really equipped to do that. So that's my talk. Thank you so much for being such a great audience and being here on such a lovely day.